Hi, guys. Before we start this episode, I have a question for you. Do you know there are two things that you should do to your garden this fall? You can find both of these items, links to them, and discount codes because let's face it, those are important at soullyrested.com/soil. The first thing, you need to be putting your soil to bed with Mineralite soil amendments. They replenish what your soil has lost over the entire growing season, and they feed your soil microbes throughout the winter. So your soil and the microbes in it are ready for spring. The second thing you need to do is do a soil test. Don't wait until spring. Find out right now the ways that your soil needs repair and start those specific amendments now. By the way, the soil test is going to tell you exactly what you need to know. That's why this is the only soil test that I recommend. So those amendments that you make will be able to take effect now and throughout the entire long winter. By the way, my extra tip, while you're there, order 2 soil test kits so that you have one on hand to retest next summer and see how things are going. Go to soullyrested.com/soil and check out both of these. Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here working at simplifying things in our lives, one day at a time, one simple step at a time. I know this way of simplifying things to work at eliminating some junk in your life. Why did I say life? In your life. It doesn't make things easier, but friend, trust me, it makes them better. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and today I have a treat for you. If you dread the colds and the oncoming flu symptoms that seem to always happen this time of year, if it winds up running through your family and takes everybody down one at a time, it's awful. It can be defeating. And today I have some wonderful, all natural, amazing solutions for you. I am bringing on a friend who is an expert in this topic, and you are going to be blessed. Shannon is an herbalist, and she's a plant medicine maker. She's the owner of Mayernik Kitchen. It's a modern day herbal apothecary in Pompton Plains, New Jersey. How cool is that? If you're in the New Jersey area, you can literally go to Shannon's apothecary and revel in some of the amazing goodness she has there. Shannon has been studying herbalism for the past 15 years, and she has found her life passion among the plants. In 2022, Shannon became a level 1 certified aromatherapist through the School for Aromatic, I'm going to get that right, aromatic studies. And just recently in 2024, Shannon became a flower essence practitioner. Didn't know such a thing existed, but Shannon is one. And definitely check out the links in the show notes to go meet Shannon yourself and follow her on different locations. And also, everything we're talking about today can potentially be foraged in the wild. But of course, right now, I doubt any of these are available where anyone is, but it's also not always easy to find it in the wild and access these things, especially depending on where you live. It might be impossible. So take heart. Go to soullyrested.com/fall. And I am linking there to everything Shannon talks about. Seriously, guys, amazing sources to get organic options of these wonderful botanicals that Shannon is working through and talking with us about today. So go to soullyrested.com/fall and stock up on some of this amazing stuff. Botanicals, I tell you what, they're the way to go. The adaptogens of nature are so much better for us than any medicine you could go buy. And also bonus at soullyrested.com/fall. I share all of my favorite fall drinks, and a lot of them include some adaptogens and botanicals. So there's just a lot of goodness all the way around. soullyrested.com/fall. Oh, and hey, I almost forgot. There's also information there how you can enter a giveaway. Shannon and I have pulled our forces together and we are offering a really fun giveaway. One winner is going to get full lifetime access to Dehydrating Academy. I've been talking about this for weeks. I've mentioned it. You're going to love it. If you want to know more about Dehydrating Academy, go to solelyrested.com/dehydrate if you don't know what I'm talking about. But for the giveaway, full access to Dehydrating Academy, a copy of my book, Sweet Maple, because complex all natural sugar, guys, it is good for you. It has polyphenols, it has minerals, it has vitamins. It's just good stuff in the right portion. It's really good. And Shannon is tossing in some echinacea, I believe. I always want to say that wrong. Echinacea tincture and, drumroll please, some amazing elderberry syrup. So enter the giveaway, guys. It's super easy. You'll be glad you did. One winner's going to be super happy. Go to solelyrested.com/fall to enter. Okay. I was going to say, without any further ado, I'm going to bring on Shannon, but I think there's one more thing I need to explain. When Shannon and I recorded this, I think it was still August. I think it was the end of August. And we were talking, I believe, about fall and the weather. And obviously that's changed a little bit now come October. Maybe not, though. I mean, I'm still just seeing hints of color. It's kind of crazy that for this many weeks I've seen little pops of color in the trees. But so far here in New England, I'm recording this on September 27th. It's not full blown fall yet. There's definitely some color, but I'm eager for the weeks ahead for all the beautiful colors. Anyway, just wanted to explain that because I often am recording many weeks or even a month or two before the episode is actually released. So, okay, here we go. Let's bring on Shannon. Okay. Well, Shannon, I am so glad that you could join me today because we've had a hint of fall in the air here in New England. I'm guessing in New Jersey, maybe you haven't yet.
We had a little bit. Last week we had some cooler temps. The mornings have been nice, but tomorrow it's supposed to be back in like the mid 90s. So I think after that though, maybe we'll start seeing, mid 80s,
Yeah.
late 80s. So, but
Yeah.
it is coming. I could tell like tree color is slightly turning like a
Yeah.
paler shade of green. So
Uh-huh.
excited.
We actually have some orange and reds up here in New England already, but
That's exciting.
um it is. So when we had talked about having you on the podcast and we had this idea, I love it that it's perfect timing for this time of year.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you could come on and chat just a few botanicals and herbs that are going to help us with the fall weather that's coming and help us build up our immunity and all that good stuff. This is
Yes.
great stuff. So I'm so glad you're here. So before we dive into all that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what you have an apothecary. You actually have this beautiful shop in New Jersey. Tell us about that, how you opened it, what you do, what got you into herbs. Just give us the gist.
Sure. So it's probably about, 15 years or so ago, right around this time, I took a class. I had never been introduced to plant medicine. I didn't grow up gardening. I knew nothing about it. But a coworker asked me to go to a class with her, and I went. And I came home and I told my husband, "I love this. I want to do this." And that's literally what started
Wow.
all of it. He had, my husband Matt had always been a gardener, so he very much so was like, "Let's do it." So
He was like, you finally understand, right?
like, and that's why we wanted to get some land so I could grow.
Right.
But yeah, from there it was really just a lot of self study. Unfortunately, in the world of herbalism, there is no certification, there's no degree, there's nothing like that. So
Okay.
unfortunately, I could say I have, 30 different certificates, which I do have many certificates, but it's just not recognized. So it's not like going to school to
Okay.
get a medical degree or anything like that. I'm not a
Gotcha.
doctor. So it is a lot of, Joe down the street could also say he's an herbalist and know nothing about plants. So unfortunately, it's kind of
Right.
like it could become the Wild West in some points. But
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
yeah, so I studied for 3 years under my mentor Robin Rose Bennett, who's here in New Jersey, and then I've
Okay.
taken Courses. I did the Chestnut School of Herbal Medicine in Asheville, North Carolina. That was a 2.5 year program, and then just different
Hmm.
classes throughout. And then we finally realized, we're learning so much, we're growing so much. Let's do something with all of this. So in 2015, we started Mayernik Kitchen, which is a modern day herbal apothecary. So we grow about 60 to 65% of the plants we use to make our herbal products with that we sell in the shop.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So
Wow.
we have a
So
nice,
having that gardener husband comes in handy.
sure does. Yeah. And it's nice. We lease some land now up in northern New Jersey. And so we grow there. And then, we also go out and we forage or we grow stuff here at home too. So it's
Yep.
we're kind of pulling from all different areas.
I love it. Okay, so the specific ones that I asked you to talk about today, I really wanted them to be things that people can forage on their own
Yeah.
potentially.
Hmm.
So before we even talk about these different botanicals, tell me what advice would you give people to forage responsibly or, wisely? What do they need to
Yeah.
keep in mind?
So you always want to know exactly what it is you're harvesting. Some plants have a lot of lookalikes that could be poisonous.
Yeah.
We don't come across a ton that could potentially, kill you, but could definitely make you sick. And nobody wants that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whether you're going out with a seasoned forager or you've got a great, field guide that you're working with, those are tips I would always say before touching any plant really. When it comes to harvesting, we err on the side of only harvesting what we're going to use. We don't like to over harvest. A lot of plants are
Yeah.
at risk. One of them that we'll talk about today. So you could either grow them at home, start cultivating, starting plants from seed, planting them into your garden. Or if you are going to go out and forage, just make sure you do it, mindfully. You don't want to just take all of it from where you're harvesting from. You want to make sure,
Right.
and you want to make sure it's a clean location and a location where, maybe dogs haven't walked the path or there's a ton of traffic or anything like that. So you do have to keep in mind some things, but if you're kind of
Mhm.
deep into the woods, there's not much to worry about on that
Yeah.
way, except knowing what plants you are harvesting.
Right. Do you have any app or certain books that you recommend?
The Peterson guides are all really good for
I
plant.
love
Yeah,
those. Yeah.
yeah, they definitely are. And a lot of times, if you have, I don't know how it is for Androids, but a Apple product, you could look right up from the photo you take. So a lot of times,
Yeah.
I like to start there and then do a little more research before really, confirming, okay, this is the plant that I'm looking at or that I've found.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, and then as we go through these too, I hope you can tell us like how we can incorporate them into our day, as
Oh
far as
yeah, definitely.
I think I think the first one, let's start with elderberry because I think that's one that everybody knows of. Everybody has heard of elderberry syrup, and that's a really obvious way that you can use it. And of course, the elder flowers. I don't think people are as aware of the fact that you can use the elder flower as well. So let's start there.
Sure. So if we have an elder tree, there is black, red, and blue. Black and blue are the most used. Red tends to be on the toxic side. And a lot of people
Okay.
might even say that, when you're working with elderberry, oh, it could be toxic. It's actually the seed that's toxic. And usually, whatever you're making, you're straining the seed out. So whether that's a syrup or a tincture, or some people make a jam or, anything like that, you're straining that out so we don't have to worry about toxicity to ourselves. Um, if you do come across an elder, what you'll see in the spring is the flowers. If you let the flowers stay on the plant, berries will follow, just like many other plants.
Right.
If you do harvest those flowers, you won't get the berry. So it's kind of a game you want to play with, depending on how many you have or how many you may find, and what you want to do with them. So
Right.
elder flowers and elderberries, they do have a good cross of what they are. They're anti-inflammatory, they're antioxidant. Um, they're great for cold and flu, as many of us know with elderberry syrup. You take elderberry syrup when you're not feeling well. Um, but the flowers themselves, I love to use to help when you have a fever. So it kind of brings on the sweating properties in your body, which will help you naturally break a fever rather than suppressing it, which a lot of people do, by taking something maybe over the counter. So you don't want to suppress it. You want your body to go through that to then hopefully, break the virus or whatever it
Right.
is you may be fighting. It's your body's way of
Right.
fighting. So I love elderflower tea for that purpose, even
I was going to ask you.
yeah,
That's what I do with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
or even into a bath. If,
Hmm.
sometimes we're that sick or we're like, I can't even stomach drinking tea. So if you
Hmm.
make a really strong infusion, you could pour that right into your bath water and then just, get in and kind of submerge yourself that way. It's a little astringent, so if you were to drink the tea, you might want to add a little honey or anything like that, as it could be, like a tart astringent flavor. But I think it's great for that. And then the
Okay.
elderberry,
Now, how do you make that infusion that you're going to put in your bath? How do you do
I
that?
would just fill a half a gallon jar with whether most likely at that point we'd have dried. Colds and flus tend to come in the cooler months. So we'd be working with dried plant material. And when I'm at home, I'm not a measurer. I kind of measure by my heart and just throw some things in
Mhm.
a jar, pour some boiling water over it, let it steep, and then you could strain it out so then you don't get all the plants, in your tub.
Okay.
And then just pour that right into your bath water.
Okay. Okay.
And if someone can't get into a tub, a foot bath or a hand bath could be just as,
Hmm.
beneficial.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Did not know that about the flowers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have the berries, which are, antiviral, antioxidant, again, carry those A and C vitamins. So they're good. We love to use elderberry syrup year round. So we use it as a preventative, not just when we're feeling sick or run down.
Agree. It's also delicious in second ferment kombucha.
Oh,
I really like. Yeah.
yes.
So,
Yeah, you could
and you
add
don't
it
have to,
to you don't have to take it like a medicine. You could add it to your
for
kombucha.
sure.
You could take it, put it in a seltzer. Not gonna lie, we've put it in champagne before. Like
Ooh, elderberry
yeah, yeah.
champagne.
There's different ways you can kind of play with it. And again, the berries could be used across the board. You could make a syrup. You could infuse honey with them. You could infuse maple syrup with them.
Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
You could even
Yeah.
you can make a tea if you wanted to with the berry. I tend to make more
Mhm,
tea with the flower, but you could definitely make
mhm.
berry tea.
For sure.
Yeah.
I like making my elderberry syrup with maple syrup, so that's
Ooh,
delicious to
yeah.
flavor your tea with. And just for anybody listening, if you want to know even more, we're going to move on to some other great things. But if you want to know even more about elderberries, episode, I was just looking it up, season 5, episode 12. It was a while ago. We have a whole episode here on the show all about elderberries. So go check that out for even more details. So season 5, episode 12. Okay, so now that we got the one taken care of that a lot of people are familiar with, I mean, I think people are familiar with all of these. I just
Yeah.
don't know if people realize how medicinal and how helpful they can be in this time of year.
Mhm.
So, what about moving on to? I call them coneflower. The official name is echinacea, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
So echinacea is the one plant that I mentioned a little earlier that is kind of at risk now if you're,
Okay.
harvesting out in the wild. So it's United Plant Savers on the at risk list.
Hmm.
So a good way to use this plant is if you want to use the plant is to grow it, right? We
Yeah.
grow hundreds of them yearly. They are perennial.
Such an easy plant to grow,
So,
too.
and I mean, you'll
Yeah.
find them in landscapes all over, and people most likely don't know they're medicinal, but they love the vibrant
Yes.
purple pink flower, and so a lot of people will put it into their landscape and not even know they've got
Yeah.
medicine right outside.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's one of those plants that if you could cultivate it and grow it in your backyard, I highly recommend it. You could use all parts of the plant, so from flower to root. A lot of times we tend to use
Hmm.
the root in tincture form because it's going to extract a lot of those medicinal properties from the root. And
Hmm.
echinacea is, I mean, it's an antiviral, it's an immune stimulant. It's one of those plants I turn to most when I'm already feeling terrible. So I don't
Okay.
necessarily use it as a preventative. I use it more like when I'm kind of in it and I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good for the next few
Well,
days.
that's good to know
Yeah.
because I do feel like with a lot of botanicals and herbal remedies, a lot of them don't really work that well when you're in the midst of it. It really is more of a preventative thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Absolutely.
really good to know.
Yeah. And you could definitely add it to tea blends and things like that. I take the tincture. And if you've ever nibbled on a leaf or, part of the flower,
Hmm.
um, it makes your mouth go numb. So it has a
Hmm.
specific property in it. So I don't know if you've ever worked with spilanthes, which is also called the
No.
toothache plant. Same properties. When you chew it, it makes you want to spit. So it creates saliva. So
Hmm.
this plant, echinacea, is also used a lot for sore throats and for any type of like oral health because it has the like numbing property when you chew on it.
Okay.
That's a different way you could use it other than just boosting your immune system. So if you do have some, in your herbal medicine cabinet, you could definitely use it if there's a toothache or a sore throat or anything like that.
Okay. And does it have much of a taste in tea? Is it kind of a greeny, grassy taste, maybe? Or
So I use mostly the root. People do make tincture
okay.
with flower and stem, and the flower and stem will definitely have more of the that like tingling. Um, but it doesn't have too much of a taste.
Okay.
I could honestly say I've never had just a cup of echinacea. It's always a blend.
Okay.
So I've never really been able to say like, oh, it's like, tastes just like this because I've had it by itself.
But to me, I like that because that tells me if I'm fighting a cold and I really want some boost to my immune system,
Mhm.
I can add these to whatever tea I'm drinking,
Yep,
probably is kind of what I'm guessing.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
You could add it to something like if you're having trouble, like a sleepy blend, or if you're, you know, maybe your sickness is causing digestive issues too. You could add it to that. So, yeah, definitely.
Okay, guys, if we're concerned about the nutrient quality of our food, we really need to think about the nutrient quality of our soil if we're growing some of our own food as well. I really can't recommend cover crops enough. They've kind of revolutionized the way that I garden. Cover crops are a living mulch. They suppress weeds, they attract beneficial insects, they control erosion, they hold moisture into the soil. And when the cover crops decay, they give nutrients back to the soil. So those nutrients are there and ready for my garden next spring. Go to soullyrested.com/cover and find out what cover crops I recommend. Also, you'll find a really great cover crop guide that I link to at soullyrested.com/cover. Okay. Okay. And I know that not everybody's huge tea drinkers like I am.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll take a second to explain that if you do have like a sleepy time tea bag,
Mhm.
you can still add the echinacea leaves or flower in and let it steep as the bag is steeping. And then you're just going to need some sort of a strainer or, get a spoon and scoop them out or whatever to get the leaf or the flower
Yeah.
out. But I mean, I know it's kind of an obvious thing, but I also know sometimes people, it's the little things that trip me up sometimes.
Yep.
So whatever you want to add it to that you're drinking, you could, if it's hot water that you're infusing your tea in, you could add some of this medicinal herb.
Yeah. And,
I love it.
echinacea is one of the ones that you could probably find in any food store, grocery store, health food store that comes in a
Hmm.
tea bag.
Okay.
It's very readily available. So
Okay.
it's one of those that you could have like what is it? Traditional medicinals is one of my favorite if I'm gonna get a tea bag. They would definitely have like an echinacea by itself and
Okay.
most likely in blends.
Okay. Okay. Great. Um, so I didn't know about the root. So you make a tincture with the root primarily.
We do. So we let the plant
Okay.
grow for about 3 years before we harvest the root because then once we harvest the root, clearly the
Oh,
plant is done. So we
uh-huh.
let them grow for about 3 years. We'll harvest, but we're
Hmm.
continually planting year after year. So when we harvest, we're not left with nothing. We have a continual
Right.
growth of it. So yeah, and we do use the flowers and stems sometimes, but we tend to use the root the most often.
Okay. Something I need to look into. Good to know. Now, another one that I am really familiar with because I do forage for this
Mhm.
is yarrow.
Yeah,
We have a lot of yarrow that grows even along like the dirt roads around here that I can go and collect walking the dog and take my scissors and a bag and I bring home my yarrow to dry it. And that I will use in a tea. But tell us about yarrow because beyond that, I don't know much about
yeah.
it.
So yarrow is great for relieving any type of pain. So it's an analgesic. It and which is what I like to use it for. So when you're not feeling well or your immune system's, running low, sometimes you feel pain, those aches and those pains and you're just feeling not great. Yarrow is a great, herb to use. You could use it
Mm,
fresh, you could use it dried. Um, Tea, tincture, anything like that. Um, I also like that it also has the diaphoretic properties that'll help you sweat. So again, it's one
Hmm.
of those herbs that'll help you to naturally break a fever. So you could,
Okay, so this and elderflower would help
yes,
with that.
and
You
you could,
probably wouldn't even, maybe you wouldn't want to use them together. Honestly, it might be too
it
much, would
might
it?
might be very warm.
Okay.
Yes, and if you are,
Okay.
I run very warm, so my body temperature is always, maybe not my temperature. I always just feel very warm. So the
Mhm.
thought of this sometimes makes me uncomfortable because I'm like, I don't want to sweat anymore than I need
That's
to.
funny because I'm the opposite. I am always
Oh,
cold, even in the summer. Like I wouldn't mind putting a sweatshirt on. And my husband, Bill, is just like you. I tell him all the time. He has an internal heater. He
oh,
is like
yeah,
always hot.
always,
It's funny.
always.
Funny.
But it's also an, anti-inflammatory. So when we're feeling sick and run down, things may be inflamed within us, and you want to bring that down. So then you start to feel better. Um, but I would say that I use it most for like the pain and also for like to help sweat to break your fever. Another
Okay.
thing that you could use that has nothing to do with your immune system, but is a great tip to know, is that yarrow will help stop bleeding. So we
Hmm.
keep a little bottle of yarrow tincture in our kitchen, and if we ever nick ourselves when we're cutting or anything like that, we'll put a few drops of yarrow, and it has a clotting. It helps to clot your blood, so it's a natural way.
Wow.
And if you're using a tincture that's made with alcohol, it kind of, the alcohol will kind of help clean it a bit too.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did not know that, and it makes me think about spotted touch me not. What's the other? You probably know the other name, the better name for it.
Oh, is that
Uh,
like the viney type plant that?
it has a, yeah, like a yellow jewelweed.
Oh,
That's what it
jewel.
is. It's also jewelweed. Yeah,
Okay.
I call it spotted touch me not.
Yep.
But this is unrelated to everything we're talking about. Sorry, this is Michelle's brain going on a tangent. But when you said that about yarrow helping with blood clotting, it reminded me that jewelweed, if you just rub the leaf on an itch, it's amazing. Whatever it is, if it's a rash or an insect bite, the itch will like go away.
Mhm.
So that makes me wonder, wait, is there any way I can use fresh yarrow in that way? This is just me being curious.
Yeah, so if you're out, you could definitely use it as you would. You'd
But I mean, like if you're in the wild and you have a little cut, I mean,
Yep.
this is probably never going to happen, but you look around and there's some yarrow. Like, is there some way it would help with blood
You could
clotting?
probably use the leaves or even just kind of like crush up the flowers. For those who are listening, kind of, just I'm doing a hand motion that's crushing. Um, but
You do a little dance
yeah,
too.
kind of just crush up the flowers and you could apply it right to your skin. So that would be a great way
Okay.
to use, almost like a
Wow.
poultice. So you
I was just going to say that.
hmm yeah.
Interesting. Well, if it ever happens, if I'm ever in the wild and I get a cut and this happens, you're going to be the first person that I say, you won't believe this,
Right.
Shannon, but I found yarrow and I stopped the
And
cut from bleeding. But that's really cool.
it is. And if you are like an avid hiker or you're out in the woods a lot and you carry
Hmm.
some first aid, things with you,
Hmm.
you could throw a yarrow tincture in your bag. Or if you wanted to take the leaves and the flowers, you could always just dry them, grind them down, and almost make a powder because then that might stick a little better.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we make a powder with
Interesting.
it, which is as easy as, drying a few flowers and leaves, throwing it in either your food processor or like a little coffee grinder and just grind it up.
Yeah.
And then we keep it in a tiny, tiny little jar. And if we know we're going out, sometimes we'll throw that in our pack just so we have it.
Mhm. I love it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm loving this. I knew you would teach me things today. I was so excited for that. Okay, so you had also mentioned that you could share with us about garlic and turmeric and ginger and how those can help us.
Yeah. I always like talking about our kitchen herbs, right? A lot of times we have them in the kitchen. Maybe we don't have fresh turmeric often, or, maybe we buy ginger just for a specific recipe. A lot of times we'll
Yeah.
have garlic. But these are your herbs or your roots kind of that you could easily find. So I always like talking about them so people know your simple kitchen herbs could be so medicinal. And almost all of them
Mm.
are, your thyme, your sage, your rosemary,
Mhm.
all super medicinal. So with these roots, the ginger, the turmeric, and your garlic, I mean, they're antiviral, they're anti-inflammatory. When I think of getting, if I don't feel well, maybe a ginger tea. Slice up some pieces of
Mhm.
ginger, little boiling water over it with a lemon, and sip on that. Not only is it good for, like I said, inflammation, antiviral, It could help with digestion. So if whatever you have going on maybe is upsetting your gut or your digestive system, that'll help with that. Um, I love to put garlic cloves into honey and let that infuse and take that almost as like your natural cough medicine. So
Mm.
you could take a spoonful of honey that's been infused, the garlic's been infused in that.
Yes.
So these are just different ways you could use, your kitchen herbs that we sometimes think more on the culinary side, but medicinally.
I love it. So you don't have to go out in the woods and forage for any of this. You
No,
can look around your kitchen too. Yeah.
exactly. Or, your local grocery store or farmer's market or whatever. And if you prepare these things when you have them, like the garlic in honey, a jar of honey could last you some time. So it's something you kind of have, and you don't have
Hmm.
to worry about, oh, I feel real crappy. Now I need to make something. No, it's already ready
Right.
for you. So you want
Right.
to use it, especially this time of year when farmers markets are brimming with all of this goodness. It's the good
Yes.
time to start, preserving, maybe not necessarily in a food way, but to create this, herbal medicine cabinet so you have it year round.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. And then how long are these things typically do you recommend? Are they going to last on our shelves?
So anything with honey is going to last quite some time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm probably the wrong person to talk to about this because I'll be like, oh yeah, it's fine.
Oh, well, I'm with you. I'm with
But
you. I know what you mean.
it's a good like.
But the high sugar content of honey or maple syrup makes things preserve for
Oh,
quite a long
absolutely.
time.
A tincture will last pretty much indefinitely. You know, we say 2 to 5 years, but
Right.
I've had tinctures at home for much longer. That just for herbs maybe I don't use often. The
Hmm.
alcohol is a great preservative. If you're working with vinegar, also another great preservative. So these things are going to be preserving your plants in a way where you could have them for 2-3 years, and then if you use it or you don't feel comfortable using it, then maybe it's time to put it back on your list to make another batch.
Yeah. I know with like dried and dehydrated vegetables, you can tell when you open the container from the smell of it if it's starting to lose some of its nutrients. The smell will decrease. I don't know. Is that true with herbs? I don't really notice that with herbs, but
Um,
maybe.
yeah, with some medicinal herbs, you could definitely tell. I've had things just dried in a jar on the shelf for probably one too many years, and you could
Mhm.
kind of start to fade and just
It's
like
just not as potent
dull.
when you
Yeah,
open it. Yeah.
but they're
It's not going to be bad for you in any way. It's just not going to be as nutrient dense.
yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you look at it, and if you second guess, and you're like, maybe compost it, maybe try a cup of tea, see how it tastes. As long as there's
Yeah.
no mold on anything dried, you should be okay.
Yeah. I've personally never had herbs I've thrown away ever. I mean,
No,
they don't go bad.
no,
Yeah.
that they don't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this was a ton of fun, Shannon. I know that we could talk for hours
My
and you could
goodness,
teach me
yes.
lots more. So maybe we'll do this again.
Absolutely.
But tell everybody, especially anybody who's in Jersey, how they can find you physically in your actual apothecary and how they can find you online.
Sure. So our apothecary is in Pompton Plains, which is in Morris County. It's called Mayernik Kitchen. And for anyone that's not local and can't come visit, you could find all of our products online at mayernikkitchen.com. And I'm sure Michelle will leave the link. 'Cause
I will
my last name always
check out.
gets somewhat screwed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Check out the show notes,
yeah.
guys.
And then over on Instagram, we post pretty often, and I'm always in my stories, and especially when I'm out on walks pointing things out. So it's a great way to just, start learning or just get curious and connect.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your walks on Instagram. I've been following you for a while there, and you're always showing us fun things.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much, Shannon. This was fun.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Chat soon.
Okay. Wasn't that great and encouraging? How many amazing medicinal plants are out there that can help us fight off the common cold and keep the flu at bay? Make sure you go to soulyrested.com/fall, and I link there to amazing sources of organic options of all of these botanicals that we talked about today, and discount codes because you need those. soulyrested.com/fall. fall. I think you're going to love it. And make sure you enter the giveaway when you're there, soullyrested.com/fall. And that's it for today. Thanks for listening, friends. Remember, it's easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it is a good life.